Perhaps this is the most famous story in the Bible, the fight between David and Goliath. You probably know people who no longer go to church. Maybe you don't go to church anymore, but you often know something about the story about David and Goliath. Today you will hear the story of David and Goliath from beginning to end, perhaps as you have never heard it before. At Bible Teller, we post weekly videos about the Bible with the support of AI images. So increase your Bible knowledge and immerse yourself in the beautiful stories. Before David goes into battle with Goliath, some things have already happened with him and the people of Israel. Saul had become king over Israel because the people wanted a king just like the other nations. At first, Saul lived with God and listened to him, and so Saul conquered many wars. But in 1 Samuel 15, Saul receives an assignment, and he does not fully carry it out. And because of this, God has rejected him. Samuel must also bring that message to Saul. In the next chapter, Samuel must therefore anoint David as king, because he will later become king over Israel. Because God's spirit left Saul and an evil spirit returned to Saul, his servants thought it wise to look for someone who could play the harp to reassure him occasionally. And the servants found David because he could play the harp, and was a mighty man of valor, and a mighty man, and of good countenance, and that the Lord was with him. And Saul loved him, and David became his armor-bearer. And Saul asked David's father for permission to employ him so that David could play his harp whenever Saul's evil spirit took over him. About that time, the Philistines gathered their armies to do battle with Israel. And the two armies pitched their tents in the Valley of Oak, the Philistines in one mountain, and the children of Israel in the other, and the valley was between them. Then a warrior came out from the army of the Philistines, and his name was Goliath, and his height was almost 10 feet, 3 meters. And Goliath began to shout who would fight him, and whoever won could capture the other and make them slaves. And Saul and all Israel were afraid of him, and dared not fight with him. So Goliath came out every morning and evening shouting at anyone who wanted to fight him, and scolded Israel and their God for 40 days. And David, who was looking after his father's sheep, had to go to his brothers to bring them some food and to watch the battle in the Valley of Oaks. David's father also wanted to know if his sons were still alive. So David arranged for someone to look after the sheep and went out with food to visit his brothers. And the Philistines and the children of Israel stood against each other. And David came and saw the array, and he ran to the children of Israel and sought out his brethren and asked how they were doing. Then Goliath came forward again and started shouting and cursing again so loudly that the Israelites ran away because they were afraid of him. And the men said to David, "That man has come to degrade Israel, but the man who slays Goliath will be rewarded abundantly by the king, and he will marry his daughter, and all the burdens that his father's house owes to Israel will be forgiven." And David was a little angry and said, "What does this Philistine think, that he dares to insult Israel and their God?" And Saul heard the words of David, and he went unto him. And David said unto Saul, "Let no one be discouraged because of this Philistine, for your servant will fight with this Philistine." But Saul said to David, "You are not fit to fight this Philistine because you are young, and Goliath has been a soldier from his youth." But David said, "I am keeping my father's sheep, and a lion or a bear came and stole a sheep from my flock, and I went after him and struck him down, and saved the sheep from his mouth. And when he attacked me, I seized him and killed the lion or the bear. So your servant has slain both a lion and a bear, and so will I slay the Philistine also, because he has defied God. And the Lord hath delivered me out of the hand of the lion and of the bear, and he will also deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine." Saul said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And David received the armor of Saul, and put on the helmet, and put on the armor. And David put on his sword, and went to run, but he could not, because he was untrained. And David took off all his weapons, and chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and took his sling, and went to the Philistine. When Goliath saw David coming, he laughed and cursed David and said, "Do you think I'm a dog because you come to me with sticks? Come, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to every beast of the field." But David cried with a loud voice, "Goliath, you come with sword and spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, whom you have cursed. Today is the day that the Lord has delivered you into my hand, and I will cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the Philistines to the birds of the air and to every beast of the field, so that all the world may know that Israel has a God." Then Goliath ran forward to meet David, and David also ran forward and took a stone and hurled it at Goliath. And the stone struck his forehead and pierced his head, and he fell. And David took a sword and cut off Goliath's head. When the Philistines saw that Goliath was dead, they were afraid and fled. And Israel shouted and pursued the Philistines, so that they fell and were mortally wounded. And the children of Israel returned and plundered the camp of the Philistines. And David took Goliath's head to Jerusalem and put his weapon in his tent. And David was highly regarded by the people because he had defeated the Philistines. After this, David's life continued, but more about that in another video. We at Bible Teller wish you all the best. Be sure to keep an eye on us for more biblical teaching and stories. Start your free membership on YouTube by clicking on the subscribe button, and see you next time.